Good morning. Today is Thursday, April 20th, 2023. It's 10:30 in the morning. This is the second half of the morning session for Natural Resources and Energy. We're returning to the Renewable Energy Standard. We're looking at some draft language, draft 7.1. For officially, it is still a, it's going to be a committee bill, so it's still officially a drafting request, and that is DR 23-0107. So we're looking at draft 7.1, time and date stamp 4/2023, 9:05 a.m. So we'll continue our discussion and look with an eye towards tuning this up in order to be able to move it next week. So with that, I had, based on our conversations in the last couple rounds with witnesses and amongst ourselves, started to try to edit the document. And so I don't think we have counsel this morning, but it's easy enough to
yeah, would you mind explaining
through? Yeah, so we, part of it is what I've asked Ms. Kowski to do is to add findings in order to just create a rationale for looking at why we're interested in moving to 100%, for instance. So there are new findings starting here. I don't know why it isn't highlighted entirely, but section 1. So policy: the state of Vermont to support the transition from the use of fossil fuels to energy sources with reduced emissions, such as through the use of electrically powered substitutes for high emitting sectors, including transportation and thermal fuels. So we've worked on that. Second was another rationale. So basically, beneficial electrification. Then the second piece here is transition to electricity to supply the energy necessary for thermal transportation needs requires that the electrical energy used be cleaner than the fossil fuel counterparts. This entails creating a grid and distribution network increasingly delivering increasingly clean renewable energy. So there's here we have clean and renewable. Well, have to be leaning into exactly using the terms in a helpful way. 3, this increasingly clean grid is the only means of creating transmission and distribution networks that are truly equitable by delivering clean renewable energy to all the people of Vermont, regardless of state level. So it was we just had, there was no articulation of the notion of equity provided by having a fully renewable grid. That way we don't leave roughly 30% of Vermonters out who live in apartments, don't have the option of generating into their own. The other homes that are either incapable or they have beautiful old shade trees, and it would be very perverse to cut those down. So if you want to edit, that was just some preliminary language. In section 2, there was a procurement section that you very reasonably said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? We need more definition. So
Lowry will be added, isn't it? Or
yeah, what do you mean by that? So it was really in there as a placeholder from last November, actually, and it was to say, do we want to address things like replacement for standard offer? Obviously, we didn't dig into that this session, and there's no time to do that. So the notion of procurement, looking forward at procurements, just rolled forward to the study section as a question mark as we're thinking about how to move to a cleaner distribution network. What role would perhaps a new procurement program play? So that's, I think the 3 asterisks there are to say that that's gone. Let's see, as used. This was not, sorry, I'm looking at the top of page 3. And I don't remember seeing all that struck language in our last draft, but maybe I just wasn't concentrating on it.
What did you
This was
strike?
not,
This was
Well,
your,
like lines 3 through 11.
is
Was
this,
that in draft 6.1 and marked as struck?
it was not.
Yeah. Yeah, so here it is. It's the same 10. Sorry, it's highlighted this time. It was not in the last one. So I'd want to figure out why. Anyway, so let's. Yeah, so this is the same as just highlighted. Group net metering means. Okay, so it's struck because what follows in 16 really proposes not doing group net metering, right? Or redefining net metering to be 150 kW or less, unless a single owner of the plant consumes on an annual basis all the energy generated by the plant. Regardless of the owner's consumption, the nameplate capacity of this plant shall not exceed 500 kW. So that was my attempt to address the issue that the PUC raised. So they said, okay, we're talking about nameplate capacity is one thing, but if you want to talk about energy consumption, you need to talk about kilowatt hours, megawatt hours. So that's why there's this bit here about the consumption of energy. Sizing so that you use the energy you produce.
Thank you. By striking the language in 10, does that eliminate the possibility of having group net metered systems?
Yes.
wait, what? I thought that was just changing the definition.
Well, so I'm, you're asking, I wish council were here to say why this provision is here, but we were, so it's not eliminating, I think that the
Yeah.
intent was not to build more group net metered systems.
Why?
Why? Because group net metered power in general is the most expensive source of electricity on the grid. So rather
That's a big policy decision that I'm not comfortable making.
sure, I mean,
What's
that's
the
what,
biggest in the group?
I didn't understand that was what was changing.
so that's what it relates to defining immediately below that net metering. The cap of net metering is reduced to 150 kilowatts from 500 unless you have the ability to use that power, consume that power. But in no case shall that group net metering account be more than 500 kW, which is the current limit. So that's the thrust of it, and the rationale. You might say, well, that sounds pretty good. But-
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so on page 4, just to finish the thought there, lines 13 and 14. That's the other piece of that is actually the language I've seen from now. The owner of such a plant shall not sell or otherwise provide energy generated to more than one customer.
Not okay with that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a single off case for it. And then the concept is you don't go bigger than 150 kilowatts unless you can use that power yourself. And that's
Why do you want to do that?
So why I'm
Yeah.
proposing this is because the net metered power is I would say, I would want to double check the data, but I think this is accurate, is the most expensive source of power that the utilities are required to purchase.
Okay.
Because they have to bank it and then give you credit for it later.
Because it's based on, retail rate.
Well, why do we value that over the installation of it. Because yes, it is sure. So first of all, I don't necessarily know if I agree with the expense point. So I'd love to get more info on that. And then B, even if that is true,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because it actually puts the eventual ownership of that power generation on a distributed basis so that individuals can be a part of the solution. I'm really not comfortable with that or this addition, and it kind of feels counterintuitive to so maybe we need to spend a bit more time understanding the rationale.
Sure.
Thank you. I feel like the questions that are being raised by this they're good questions, and all of this feels like it would be good to move into the study. Like there's especially again with the amount of time that we have right now, I think this is worth a discussion, especially in light of what you were saying at the beginning with the interests of renters or folks who don't have the ability to have solar at their house, the ability to have group net metering seems important.
Yeah.
But I want to balance that with, what are the costs, but that's going to take some time.
So I'm a member of a community solar array because we don't have a good location and because we are in affordable housing. So to be able to have that net metering is really important for us. And it offsets our usage, even though we don't have it in our backyard. So I don't feel comfortable with this. My other question though is my understanding, was this a proposal that the utilities are suggesting? Because
No, this is a proposal I'm suggesting.
okay, because my understanding is,
But it was also, when I originally had this drafted, it was as part of, making a commitment to going 100% renewable and finding a way. So the procurement piece kind of is like a last vestige of I was originally thinking we were going to be offering in the bill another way of generating power that would, so more clean, renewable generation at a lower cost. And that would also feed into the grid that supplies everybody. So I can see, so when we can take, I don't know that we're gonna sort this out. But I can see from it's subtle, but I can pick up that you're a little concerned.
I'm a little concerned, but I want to understand because if it does get us to more renewable energy, then I would be in favor of it. But what you're articulating is not that.
No, this is, I would say, it's attempting to reduce cost pressures on the current system. There's cost shifting, right, that goes on with net metering.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, so we would have to take more testimony.
Yes.
But I think we've had I would say a lot of testimony over the last several years about the cost shift related to net meter power.
Okay.
And so at the same time that we're talking about increasingly relying on the grid and generating more and putting more renewable onto it, seems like it behooves us to have the cost of that renewable power as low as possible. So the concept is to say, are there other ways to generate that put more renewable on the grid that aren't group net meter, for instance? And that's what, for instance, Standard Offer provided a pathway to that at a far lower cost. So if you think of group net metering as just another way of injecting power into the grid for consumption elsewhere, you could be doing that at a lower cost through a power purchase agreement on an array, built anywhere. It wouldn't have to be that clean power from that array could be offered to customers either through a PPA to the utility, or the utility would be compelled to purchase it because it's actually under the net metering program.
Yeah,
And then there could be a significant cost differential. It'd be the same power, going to the same grid to deliver the same benefits to people, but one is more expensive than the other. So if we're going to use more power over time through beneficial electrification, eventually growing load, why would we want to bring in more clean power at the lowest possible price? And group and net metering, to my understanding, we would get more information, is not that strategy. It's actually the most expensive way to add more renewable energy to the grid. So this is looking for the goal, and that's why we're talking about, going to 100%. So there's no backing away from the idea that we want more clean power on the grid. The question was, what's the most cost effective? Not just cost effective, that's really what the study gets at. So there's a
Yeah.
value stack. It's cost effective. It has something to do with resilience. It has something to do with, maybe there's associated storage that adds the ability to manage load. There's a lot of other benefits that it could be that we specify that we're valuing generation close to load, so that there's less transmission and distribution costs required. But group net metering doesn't address that. For instance, you're injecting wherever and off taking wherever. So,
It appears to be
no,
that it's okay for single entities to produce the same amount of electricity that is being denied to people that produce it as a cooperative amongst themselves.
sorry, can you say that again?
Is it limiting the generation of net metering electricity?
Yeah.
By single entity as compared to cooperatively or groups getting together to produce the same
Oh, I see.
product
Now I see.
and distributing amongst themselves
yeah,
versus.
Yeah.
it's like the.
When you said co-op, I thought you were talking about
Oh, like-
legally a co-op, like Vermont Electric
To
co-op.
have a joint ownership.
Yeah. So obviously a bigger discussion, but
That's,
I'm
we run equity through all these bills and then it appears to be contrary to our equity policies with what's the catch of why the same amount of electricity produced by a single entity is less expensive or more expensive than by something that's owned by a group of folks.
okay. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
But it seems to treat it differently.
Yeah, so I would want to better understand like to what degree how we're using the word cooperative and who actually owns whatever
Well,
facility.
some
we're
people
talking
do, so that's how I Senator McCormick has had his hand up.
Yeah.
So I don't, but there is, Senator McDonald is hitting on it, a point that I agree with.
about. Senator McCollum.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm available to be educated. If I'm wrong, it wouldn't be the first time. But it seems to me that anything we can do to encourage people to generate electricity in a green manner, in a green manner. In Vermont, you don't get a lot of people with their own backyard windmills, but there is local solar, and then there's also the cooperative community generation. Is that the idea that you don't just get your own power off the system, but that you can sell power is one of the incentives to do that. And it has been an incentive for several years, and it seems to me has been effective. So I don't know why we'd want to monkey with that.
Well, again, I would say if we can provide more clean power to more people at a lower cost and be as inclusive as possible, then that seems, for instance, 500 kW arrays. It is sort of a de facto commercial generating facility. It's not spinning your own meter backwards, which was the original rationale for the program. So I get how there was, I'd say 10 years ago, maybe, the net metering limit got pushed up as part of accelerating the pace of deployment of more solar. That my sense is that just as standard offer has served a purpose for a period of time, and now it's winding down. I think the last contracts are being led. There's still standard offer power contracts, I think, out there to be built, but they're not letting new contracts. That group net metering may be similar, and it was a way to generate more power. And now, so what I'm asking, I guess, proposing in this is, has that tool, sort of run its course in that form, and might we offer a alternate going forward, that is less expensive, and eventually by 2032, completely inclusive. I can say won you over.
You've definitely won me over.
Senator Watson.
Thank you. So I hear
Yeah.
your point, and I get, that net metering has had some unintended consequences about who is subsidizing who, and and that it's expensive. My thought is that you get what you incentivize, and so I wonder if there are other alternatives besides just striking this, to say, like, what if group net metering was, to do group net metering, it had to be co-located with like a neighborhood, or that there's ways to get it to be right-sized for a locality. So I'm interested in making it work for the distribution utilities, and every distribution utility is not the same, and so, like, how do we hear everybody? But I'm because I think there's a lot of nuance to that, and I hear Senator McCormick as well, like, we want more, we want more renewables on our grid in general, not just to get towards 100%, but to clean up the physical power from our grid, not just the portfolio. So there's multiple pulls, sure, I think, on this. Anyways, all that is to say, this is one of the reasons why I would love to see this included as a part of the discussion in a study, because I think it's a big topic, and I think it's something that,
Well,
I'm open to that.
yeah.
what's that?
I'm open. That's a great suggestion.
Well, okay, so this has been in the draft, every draft.
I thought it was just striking the definition, not removing the option. I thought we were changing. I did not understand that
Okay.
change. I did not.
10 did not. Sorry.
Yeah, so 10's in my last version.
10 is not in my last version.
Yeah,
It wasn't taken out.
6.1.
I have 5.1. Oh, maybe there's a 6.1 then.
6.1, it's struck.
I did not have 6.1.
So anyway, I just want to make sure this is like not entirely a surprise. The only, what's different in this is that
Yeah, the last.
the language in 16A is expressed differently. So people, like the PUC, it said, it's, are you really talking about a single customer? Are you talking about co-located? You need to clarify that we're talking about generation. Usage is measured in watt hours, nothing like capacity, so you need to straighten that out. So that's why there's new 16A language and then 16E. Clearly, now that it's more expressed more clearly than the last time, it's causing concern, and we would.
Do we
We don't have testimony that I think would make people feel comfortable
Yes.
addressing it. So the second half of the bill is all about the study. And if this assertion, based on what I've learned in the last few years, seems debatable, clearly it's debatable, right? And then then it seems fair game to put it into a study, but because at this point, there's so much pending that we might as well include that question in the study itself.
Yeah.
You know, and my take on the study is that it's a let the chips fall where they may. You know, let's get the data, find out what things cost. Could well be that the value of generation is higher when you combine other features with it. You know, things we were just talking about, co-location, reduced transmission, in-state development equals economic development, and end up with a value stack that we don't yet know what the value is. I think if we're gonna do that, then it makes sense to me, as you suggest, Senator Watson, to say, okay, so let's do the same kind of even-handed analysis of this form of generation. It's just one of the forms.
There's a section in there that deals with not the forms of generation, it's the who owns it. I was trying to come up with an analogy. I said, you went and asked for a 14-inch pizza and it costs $12. And you say, I'd like you to cut it please into 8 slices. They go, oh, we can't sell you 8 slices. You got to buy the whole pizza. Was that a sort of part of the provision that the pizza has to be consumed by a single entity and can be consumed by eight people?
8 people. Yeah, you'd have to eat your own pizza. Or as my father used to say, when I said, you want to cut into 8 or 12 pieces? He said, oh, 8, I couldn't possibly eat 12.
The homeless going to tell us what you'll be embarrassed at. They asked him if he wanted 6 slices or 8, and he said, I don't think I could eat 8 slices.
All right, so it's study material.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just trying to compare, and maybe I just totally missed 6.1, but I've been looking at draft 5.1 that the DUs had with their proposed edits, and I was much more comfortable with that, so I was comfortable with everything in that 5.1 draft. I appreciate the addition of the findings. I think that was needed, so that's great. The only thing I didn't like in the PUC was having the PUC do it versus the JFO recommendation.
Yeah.
So it looks like in 7.1, you have the JFO
That's
doing
cool.
it with incorporation or in cooperation with, which is great. But my concern is still with the 100% tier 1 requirement. So I basically am, maybe I just missed 6.1 because what I'm seeing is 5.1 is very different than 7.1, and I missed the interim step. And if we're going to make the changes that are jumping us into 7.1, I would need some testimony, as you pointed out, to feel comfortable with that. But I was pretty comfortable with 5.1.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I just worked from the last draft Kellen gave us.
Which number was the last one she gave?
6.1,
Oh,
dated
okay. Maybe I
4/18, so
maybe I totally missed it.
beginning of the week.
Okay. Maybe it's because we had.
And I think, what got a little confusing is that the DUs, in an effort to be helpful, took 5.1, edited that version. Well, I think while they were
Okay.
doing that is when Ellen produced
Oh,
6.1.
Okay.
So they ended up editing one generation back. And so it's like 5.1 got reproduced by then, when we already had a 6.1. So we went forward, back in this
Okay.
form.
Okay.
And that was a confusing moment, but that's
Yes,
why.
I got lost.
Anyway, it doesn't really, we have the language to look at in either one, and regardless of the sequence, we can use anything in the room, so we're fine by that.
the
Just
battery.
so folks are aware, perhaps ironically, if I don't have a paper version of it, it like doesn't exist in my head.
Yes.
So, I will
Cool.
just put that in as a request.
What you get.
If there's a new version of something,
Yeah.
I love a paper copy.
Okay.
Also, we don't have the battery. I thought we had requested the battery storage language for 7 for the next draft, and I'm not seeing that in
Yeah,
there.
so I didn't do anything on the study side of things, because I thought we would, as a committee, go through the different ideas, of what would be studied, and do that as like a group editing process, like say, how many things do we want to study? And clearly now we have one more, which is cost benefit analysis on net metering and in particular group net. So that, yeah, there's no change to that. And it starts out with, so first thing there to study is the possible change of tier 2 to 20% or 30%. So I'm gonna add mine that in addition to that, so plus net metering, plus group metering. Sure, we are on page 6. Yeah.
So I actually also have a lot of questions around I know, so Senator White has concerns about the 100% by 2030, and like, what does that mean? I have questions about on page 3, and we talked about this group net metering, but in my mind, that is tied in together with the 16A piece, which I had expressed some concern about previously as well. And I've learned a lot more since then, but that is also a part that I would love to, if we're going to change something, I would love to again make it a part of the holistic change that would come about through this study. So I just wanted, before we,
Sure.
it sounded like we were jumping to talking about the study, and I just wanted to flag that before we got there.
Okay, well, so I think we were talking about taking the concept that's laid out in section 3 currently.
Okay.
About group net metering.
So that includes
And turning that into one of the things
Okay.
that gets studied is how are we gonna look at really, if someone said, what is this study for? I'd say, because we'd like to go to 100%. We'd like to get there sooner rather than later and make a commitment to it. And we'd like to do it in a fair, balanced way that's cost effective.
Yeah. Okay.
And since, so probably it makes sense, well. And this bill is a little off because when I first drafted and group net metering, there was this group net metering adjustment. I was also anticipating at that point that we might be doing something like standard offer 2. So it'd be something like, oh, well, you're not actually pulling the rug out
Yes,
from underneath
yeah.
somebody. You were doing it this way,
But here's the
but now you're gonna offer it this way because you're gonna get to the same end, so you might get there less expensively.
Yeah, but we don't have that part
We
in the
don't.
bill. Yeah, so that's a
Your
different.
point's well taken. So I'm thinking the concept in section 3 becomes a question in
Okay.
section 5.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm now good.
Can we include that bit that you just said though, around the standard offer being, like, what would the,
So that's, thanks for reminding me. So earlier I said, oh, I took out that procurement section because we might want to address other means of generation. Right? It could be standard offer or standard offer 2.0. It could be, I don't know what the other
yeah.
what
I think that's-
strategies, how we would define a strategy, but the strength of standard offer was that it put out a competitive bid projects, I think up to 2.2, it was 2 megawatts. And I'm pretty sure that was the limit on it. At any rate, the downside of it was that and where it didn't, the location of it was not constrained by factors you might want to consider, like generation close to load And it also meant that if you were a utility, you were within BEV or 100% renewable, you were required off-taker. And some utilities said, hey, please let us place new assets in a way that makes more sense to our distribution network.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McCormick and Senator McDonald.
does this touch on, I get communications from constituents from time to time, people who have solar, say the various changes we've done in the last couple of years have basically they experience as a double cross,
Double cost.
that they put money in and this wasn't supposed to be the deal. And there also, I hear occasionally from someone who's in the business of selling solar power, who say the various changes put them out of business. Is this addressing?
Well, I think, the study should look at it doesn't address, I think the constituent response you're hearing is because the PUC sets rates for new systems, and it used to be done statutorily. I think was a bit of a disaster, and we're not really equipped to do rate making in the legislatures, so it went across the street. And that's how the rate making gets done for net meter power. And because for a variety of reasons, they reduced the pay rate for net meter power. It made some people unhappy, like it's less than two things happen. One, newer systems coming on. So the deal for someone who's already on didn't change in terms of what their pay price was.
10 years or something.
Right. But the utility's ability to charge you for service was called out and allowed. So utilities end up charging because they have poles and wires come to your house. If you had an array that zero out your bill for the year, so you were no bill. The utility concern was, but we have to maintain poles and wires to your house. We act as a battery when you need us. We need to be compensated in some way. Otherwise, you've sort of disappeared you're not contributing to the cost of running that utility, but you're relying on that utility. Since the capacity factor on solar is somewhere in the neighborhood, I forget, 17%. Mr. Sterling's here, he probably knows the number for a month, but he doesn't look ready to report. Something like 17%, that would leave you at 83% of the time you would be relying on the grid. So he said, hey, if we're gonna provide power for you 83% of the time, recognize that value and compensate us for being there.
It's not just power for power, there's also that they're doing.
There's several sometimes considerations on the same. You put up a solar panel, it's in the Shia, it can't be sold because you can't get it out to customers when you don't have the lines to get out. Mr. Chair, the first year of standard offer, it was I'm going to say it was 30 cents a kilowatt hour.
Oh yeah,
And
the prices.
And people put in proposals and they had to pick the winners by lottery. They didn't pick the winners by, this one's close to the power grid and that one's way off, far away. And the second year they wanted to do the lottery again. And wait a minute, it was changed to say, we'll pick the winners by how close they are to the grid to make it less expensive to get on the grid. And for how many years has this been now? 20-something?
Standard offer, I don't remember. Anyway.
The next big change was we're not going to put a price on what we will pay you if you build it. We're gonna have all you folks out there that wanna build these things to have a reverse auction and compete against each other. And we will permit the ones who are willing to produce the electricity at the lowest cost. And each, if we had a line that showed where those changes took place, I'm still trying to understand why we would have a change to say that, you know, Mr. Smith could do a whole bunch of kilowatt hours, but if the three, you know, Jones houses down the road want to share
Yeah.
the same panels, you can't do that. That's what, I think that's what this
Yeah,
says.
that is what it says, yeah.
There should be a rationale for that.
Yeah.
If solar energy is ineffective and a waste of time, then no one should be able to do it. But I think that's what
It sounds like we're
wrangling us.
putting that in the study, I think. So I think that we've, yeah. Can I just ask what you'd like to do moving forward, how you'd like to proceed with this? Because
Yeah.
I would happily work offline with you on some things that are of concern to me that we might see in the study. I'm also happy to start going through the things in this. It seems like you want to move on this quickly.
Well,
And we've
we'll
got
come
some-
back with next week. And
Okay. Are there folks I can recommend for testimony that can describe how the cost shift around net metering is not necessarily an accurate description of what is occurring?
I would say rather than us, I mean, that seems like if we were gonna, since we're
If we're
moving to a
not-
study, you know, ask the question in the form of concluding it in the study,
Okay,
then I think, I appreciate your question, and I think it's a good question to answer, like, treat everyone the same. Well, look at a variety of ways of generating, and then let's equip ourselves to be better informed for next session, to look at how we would incentivize further generation on the way to 100% by 2032.
and I would just argue that some of the externalities of other energy sources are not captured in the monetary amount that we pay. And I think that that is a conversation that is lacking so far in our discussion of this bill. And I
Well-
mean, like the impacts on carbon, as well as the impacts on just pollution and how we've subsidized a lot of the ways that, like peaker plants being subsidized, you know, with federal dollars and investment. I think that we are seeing now the long-term cost implications of when you subsidize fossil fuel and it's used to buoy up an electric sector. Yes, obviously the switch away from that is going to be costly. And I worry that we have not articulated the value of clean energy in this bill, as I've heard from my constituents and their desires. So at this point, I would be voting no on this bill as draft 7.1. So I would hope that we can come to a place where we either go back closer to what 5.1 had, or we move in a different direction with the bill.
Yeah, so 7.1 was never, as I said at the outset, but maybe wasn't clear,
Yeah,
was the only thing I edited with Ellen was the very beginning of the bill and left the study language unaddressed, although we have memo from Mr. Kaur, and another one very much like it from Mr. Sterling, talking about possible items to address in the study. And so I figured what we would end up doing as a committee is looking through those proposals.
oh, okay,
And using them to rewrite the study language.
oh, great,
And that was really the thrust of what I thought our work would be.
great.
I see that the group metering concept is less well received than I thought. And we talked It was in there before.
I totally missed it. I didn't
I
It's
even,
generated discussion.
It's generated discussion.
As is always,
Yeah.
in
So-
amongst the group.
Yeah, so I didn't, it's a bit of a surprise to me to see that we had gone through it before, but.
I
whatever-
apologize.
whatever
That
reason-
is on us. I totally thought that I had not caught the changes in 6.1. I've been looking at 5.1 and assumed that that was what we were working with to get to 7.1. So
Oh.
that is, I apologize,
That's okay. I'm just,
because I can understand that being surprising if you had thought that we had agreed on that.
yeah, well,
But
the
I
end of
missed-
the session is peak demand time.
yeah,
Different demands. for
Different
discussion and
demands,
Decision
yeah.
making and peak demand times.
well, and, so to your point, I'm just looking back, there's other drafts too, 3.1, and they include changing the 150 KW, 500 KW piece, but they don't include what council included this time, which is the strike to the,
Because I saw E
to the-
before, E,
yeah, it was in.
that's in 5.1, and I still had issues with it in 5.1, but I was,
So anyway, the point, what in my mind was that we, the main value, I think, of the bill at this point is just to have better information together for next session.
yeah.
So rather than drive our headlights, well, as in we've been making a decision that people don't yet feel like they have the data to say, oh, that makes sense to me, let's make that change. Let's just include it in the study. And then the question is, okay, what else do we want in the study?
Yeah.
Make sure that what we get back, so it's still led by JFO. It's still under contract, and I think the most helpful thing for us to do as a group is to say, to define precisely what kind of information we want back in that report, so that we have an open playing field, fair and balanced. We'll look at any way of achieving 100% by 2032. All comers are welcome, kind of thing, but we need to define it.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm wondering if we, if it's worth, diving into the study right now and talking about those details, or
Yeah,
do you want to
looking
hold
at
off on
section
that?
The only thing, I'm just thinking practically speaking, I don't know if we all have that same language to work from. So if we could pause and get copies.
So I'm looking, I think the section that we would be discussing is on page 6.
Section
and-
5.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in the draft. And what I like about this is that I like this as it is, but I did also like the additions that we saw in 5.1.
To the study.
Yeah, which were B through F, which it looks like you did capture some of those. So that would be section 3 and draft 5.1. So we have parts of that in section 5 of 7.1, but not all of it.
And I only thought that when I met with council end of day yesterday, I didn't feel like I had a good sense of which things that we've seen, like Mr. Sterling's memo, Mr. Core's memo, the DU's suggestions. I didn't want to go ahead and just start picking and choosing myself to put it into a next draft, although it's nice to see everything in one place, because it's easier to do that sorting process. And rather than try to do it now, I think probably maybe this will be, so let me propose something. How about if we circulate to everyone on the committee one document with all the study ideas in it, so that we have sort of a master list to work from. We can weed that out, tune that language, add or delete, and then do that in our next meeting.
Can I,
I'm just feeling otherwise it's gonna process wise, it'll be a little awkward. Because you have different emails than I have and
Oh.
they're
I just have the
There.
PUC one.
texts being, traded and there's different data passing around. I'd rather get it all on the table at once so we can all see it. And anyone who wants to look, at proceedings can check it out.
yeah. Thank you. I think that sounds like a good idea, and just want to raise one other question, just about the role of us in this study. Wondering, I mean, if what your thoughts are about potential, like either like a working group or a group to go through this study over the summer.
So I'm interested to hear what the committee's preferences. I'm having talked to Approach lately. I'm a little nervous about they seem to
They're
be
taking us out.
on the warpath around the legislative study committees. Because
okay.
they've had like apparently an extraordinary number of them, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't put it forward if we think it's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So we might get supported or might not.
Yeah.
The working group that we had earlier on and talked about was under I think it was under your bill, right? There's just a single member of House, a single member of the Senate, and then it was a variety of other people. There's 11 here. We talked about maybe there should be more legislators, more like a regular working group. Otherwise, it's a little strange for us to be there. Are people interested in having that? I think we sort of have two models going on at once. We have a working group doing the work. We also have a contract being run by JFO to bring back analysis, like the cost benefit analysis stuff. What are you thinking about doing both? Is it one or the other? I don't necessarily see it that way. But I thought we were relying on, for the most part, on contracting the data.
Yeah, well, so just looking at the S-140, the storage bill language. So I do like the idea of having a group of folks to I guess like receive the study and be in contact with all the relevant players, but to have a group be a part of that. And I am certainly interested in having it be more legislator involved than not.
Thanks for waiting for telling us all. She's involved in the cooperative system. And I full disclosure, I have net metering panels and put up for, I'm trying to remember how many years they,
A while.
it was a long time.
You got the good rate.
Well, I had a rate, but after, like myself and others, after having made the investment, that our rates have been cut and then cut and cut. Whereas some of the larger commercial ones got a guarantee for 20 years, but they had to compete with each other in an auction to get that. So we're not, they're apples and oranges and pears and grapefruits in this discussion. And it's really hard to compare them all. So which is why a timeline might look at the decision points and how things changed, and to know who each time it changed, there were winners and losers, some of whom got left behind, some of whom had guarantees, and in the future, what's the likelihood of being left behind? What's the guarantee? Or we need to know those things before we let the, decide
Sure.
who they're buy from.
And I would say to your point, Senator, what I saw in the language that we got from the DUs in their study, I really appreciated D through F, where they say grid upgrade expenses associated with increased distribution of generation and their effect, whether paid by developers, utility, or electric customers or consumers. So that feels like it was kind of speaking to the point you're describing, as well as the standard benefits or disadvantages of historically disadvantaged communities. So that is like, it hit, I feel like you're speaking to two things we did have. What I have a question about is I haven't seen any other study proposed language other than what we got from the DU. And again, perhaps I missed that, but in this big document, we've got stuff you said from the DU, and who would the other groups be that we have study
There
language?
were emails that I think, I didn't know that it went to everyone on the committee,
Oh, okay.
but.
So it's not that I've missed that okay, that makes me feel a little better. And then,
But for the sake of transparency, what I thought would be helpful is that I would, before the weekend, get all these ideas that are sort of coming in over the transom and put them into one document that we can
Okay.
share and post,
great.
and then everyone can see what's, being put on the table,
I think that's
as
genius.
opposed to having, we're getting this sort of fractured conversation going with different pieces coming, not to everyone, not necessarily in a public way. So it's feeling a little awkward,
Okay.
that if I were watching and not in a room or something, I'd say, wait, who's speaking for my interests, and
Yeah.
where did this come from, and all that stuff. So I think it would be really good to
Could
slow
we,
down and make it fully transparent to public.
yeah, so that, I totally agree with that. I think it's very smart. Can we just make sure that we get Ann's bill in the next draft, no matter what we do?
And so let's talk about that one, because that's really, we talked about putting the two bills together and trying to figure out, strategically, that might be a good thing. It feels like the study we're talking about, we're doing it through a contract to an expert party that can do all this cost benefit analysis, blah, blah, blah. That seems really different than the working group that's looking at storage. And then one of the things we talked about was, right, storage plays a role in the different, the report-based analysis should include, like, what's the value of storage? That's like one of the adders we talked about. So it made me wonder, do we want to have a separate, this is for discussion, do we want to have a separate legislative committee, or do we want to put all the questions we have into this study?
That's, I don't know, I don't have a strong opinion.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's your bill. So
Yeah. Yeah, no,
feel free to lobby for.
I guess I am feeling like it might make sense to have a hybrid where it's a legislative group, but then also having the JFO do the technical kinds of questions and data gathering. Yeah.
So with that in mind, and knowing that one of the technical questions would address storage, have you sort of rethought like what 140 would take on compared to what it might? If we have this study, we're going to address battery storage in the study. I'm just asking, are there still things to do for the group? And what would they be?
I think it would probably make sense to take some time over the weekend to see about like boiling down, because there's a lot of asks in here.
Yeah.
But maybe we could boil these things down into a couple essential pieces and just roll that into either the JFO piece or questions that the group should answer, having heard from specific technical people.
Okay, so.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what I was missing was we started out there, we also had the RES, and then the question was, oh, well, if there's a technical study going, include storage.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so now what's still,
Right,
what's the unique value of moving after 140
right.
forward? And I just want us to sort of square up how we're doing things, even if we would have 2 irons in the fire. Well, chaos shall come order.
So is it all right for Senator Watson and I to work with Ellen to see how we can incorporate it into the next draft?
Sure.
I mean, we can do that.
Okay,
That's great.
we'll do some boiling.
We'll do the standard, but
It is maple.
get language in, show this highlighted, it'll be easier for us to go through it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we haven't tried to integrate the two.
Yeah.
And, so that's a useful thing for us to get cracking on, because they look side by side and separate, even though we've said they could merge. Okay. So I'm making a note. I'm gonna get every suggestion I've received, turn it into one document, send it off to the committee, give it to Jude, ask her to post it. And I'm gonna call it the consolidated suggestion document.
Ooh,
There we go. And
the
then,
CSD.
yeah, and then we can use that. And my hope would be that we would come back to it on Tuesday. And get it out to people before the weekend. People could look at it on Monday. Maybe you can do some drafting with Ellen on Monday. If it turns out that Tuesday is too soon, have a talk to Ellen and see if Tuesday is too soon for her. If not, let's aim for Tuesday. If she needs more, if it's gonna take more time for you to sit down with her and get language, then let's aim for Wednesday.
And then that brings up the other question of where does this bill go from here?
That is a question. There's more than one way to the finish line, but it's late, so. So obviously, I'm sort of thinking aloud. We could finish our work on it and it could attach to something. We could finish our work on it and send it on its own. And if House were interested and inclined, they could get it on rules and say, great, we've had questions about the res as well. Now you've got a study and a program. We'd like to see the same answers. And they can just pick it up and use it.
There is a bill in the House that I think we could, I mean, maybe that's an offline question, but I would like to see this form of whatever we end up with having some traction this year, so we can at least get the study going over the summer, so we can have a fair shot at having a deep conversation next year.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a few options, and there is a House bill on the other side that I think maybe we could possibly
So
attach.
yeah, so let's have a discussion about there's in the end of a session, there's lots of ways to get to the finish line.
When do morning committees shut down?
We have
Next week is
7 days left, including today, so we have 4 days next week. We have today's Thursday, so we have 1 day left this week, and 4 days next week, and 2 the following.
I'll be missing for that week after next.
The first week of May.
Oh, we've just discussed,
Oh, okay.
I gave notice in January. It's coming, but,
Oh, but
I haven't
this is your,
brought it up
this is
in
your
time.
graduate, this
Yeah,
is your,
my granddaughter's graduation.
well, you have to be there.
Is that their train?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exciting.
Sure. No, you let
New college?
everyone know.
said what?
New college?
New
High
college.
school, isn't it?
Oh, no, she's getting her nursing school.
Mm.
Cool.
She's getting.
New college has been a featured college for
Oh,
the last few weeks.
Oh.
so we are planning, if I understand right, we are gonna take a look at the direct deposits of poisons in lakes to get it.
H30.
Yeah, look at
We
that.
are, Lake Bomazine.
That's good.
is
That's good.
still.
That's-
And are we
Yeah.
leaving Wake Boats until next year, or are we gonna take a look at Wake Boats?
I didn't have Lake Boats on our
Yeah.
list for this year at this point.
What are your priority bills? Are you
So,
126?
well, I'd love to see us do, like the 140 at Res combo, right? We have 158 at Bottleville, we have 126. 30 by 30 bill. 151, 161 I've heard is a very narrow thing, but very helpful to fire wardens.
Hmm.
Could we please get that done? What am I not seeing?
Household
Oh,
hazardous waste, yeah,
867,
which we
household
have.
hazardous waste,
I
yeah.
think we've got that on the agenda.
That's on the agenda, so. Yeah, I think that was it in my mind for what we would probably get to this year.
Great, so biodiversity, beverages, household hazardous waste, and the res bill is what you expect us to get done in the
Yeah,
next 7
Res 140.
one. So, yeah, that's,
And then 161, I think it's like a very skinny bill, the fire warden bill. Famous last words. Haven't read it, so should make sure that it is as skinny as people. I've just heard it's gonna be useful to fire wardens, but we please do that.
cool. I think we can do it. Go team.
And the other thing that makes it, you might say, why are you sitting so quietly? We have so many things still we're trying to do, because after May, whatever it is, 4th, we can, 4th is gonna be till 10 a.m. And we are welcome to meet, like 8:30 to 10. Talk-
Even after we,
Even after we
Oh.
officially lose our mornings.
I did not realize
we can
that.
Still use 8:30 to 10.
Okay.
So,
Okay, come in on Monday.
yeah, we've got.
Alas, I
Jude?
Yeah.
She'll be here. That's all that matters.
We have
And
done,
on your list, you mentioned
we have done Monday.
aquatic herbicides.
He's got 31, yeah, which is
Yeah.
the aquatic nuisance bill is, so what I have listed is 126 biodiversity, the beverage, 158, the beverages, 67 household hazardous waste, the draft res bill, and it sounds like what we think will be simple is 161, the burn permits, and then 31, the aquatic nuisance.
Yes.
Sounds like trapping is gonna be bigger than what we can even start.
Trapping?
Yeah, I just wanted to. just to
You gotta
check in.
mention it,
I just
yeah.
gotta-
Are you getting emails about it? or something?
No.
We have 3 hours, 2 weeks from now, I think we would do.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
All right,
We'll
well,
be
yeah,
getting
just put it,
emails
put it on the radar.
That would be a Monday meeting, just for that. No, we're not, that's, to be serious, so that whole process, to some people's satisfaction, to some people's dismay, is still unfolding before, what we did last year, now it's going to a recommendation, now it's going to the Fish and Wildlife Board, and they haven't got to the finish line yet.
Okay.
That-
So,
Yeah, we heard from them, of course.
Yeah.
And we actually had text, which in my view, having waited through that I had held up my end of my promise, which was I wouldn't start thinking of it until they were done. The
Mm.
commissioner made the point that what they actually reported on was not the report, but a draft,
Mm.
which has a slight
Oh.
feel of Calvin Ball about it. But nevertheless, my sense is, okay, we'll wait on the draft before we start thinking legislative. So that would be next year.
So, yeah, I think once they finished, we signed ourselves up last year for basically a full year cycle of them doing work.
Gotcha.
Yeah, some people are happy with what's happened, other people are unhappy with what's happened, but we won't judge till they're done.
I mean, the phrase a full year cycle, but I signed up was to wait for the report.
Yeah.
I did not understand, or was there any reason to understand that that would be a full year cycle? But there it is.
Right, so we have, does anyone have, so thank you, so, I'm gonna reread my to-do, which is create this consolidated suggestion document, Senator White's CSD, and post it to our website, and circulate it to the committee.
And we're,
And you guys are gonna
Sure,
work
sure.
with Ellen to see about weaving in provisions from
Storage.
140 to the next draft.
and from earlier today with the bottle bill, it sounds like we're close.
Yes,
But I'm gonna get a little bit more info on the data piece and see if on Tuesdays, because you're hoping to vote it out on Tuesday?
The
Or-
schedule's a little in flux, like if we can do, so the challenge, so I'm not sure if it'll be Tuesday or Wednesday.
Oh,
Depends,
okay.
like, do we pull the res up? Is the res in the bottle bill and they could be changing places depending on whether or not Ellen can draft
Mhm.
for Tuesday.
Because it's my calling. Okay, and then how biodiversity bill? When are you hoping to vote on that one?
Tomorrow,
Yeah, okay.
8:30 AM. Secretary's the last stop. We have, there have been suggestions came in from Mr. Covey, Mr. Larson. We had a conversation yesterday about one proposed change to what we saw, so-called consensus
Which,
proposal.
Mhm.
Yes,
my update is that I have heard that the water piece
Yeah.
is, everyone is now comfortable with not including that.
Okay.
So I'm happy to pull back on my suggestion, if that, withdraw my amendment.
all right, so that.
So I will not be,
Cleans up that one
Yeah.
thing, so that leaves us with a proposed amendment from Mr. Larson, which I've asked Secretary Moore to address.
oh, okay.
Mr. Covey, which I've also asked Secretary Moore to address. It's, I think in practice, there's a question about whether they're already covered by the bill and the current practices at AMR. So she'll be addressing those two, and then the third thing that we hadn't had any testimony on was AMR has an appropriation in that.
Oh, yeah, for the one,
So there's that third thing, but I figured these are all really discrete, and then we should be able to dispatch them 1, 2, 3. Create a final bill and vote it. And we've scheduled half an hour for it, and I think that's probably enough, because there's a lot of homework being done to be ready to make it a very focused, tight discussion, because that's all that's left. So we vote that tomorrow at 8:30.
get it done, and then we'll be,
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, so thank you all the way around for helping sort through lots of moving pieces. We have a little time. I'd be happy to stop a little early, but does anyone have a governor's appointee that they want to report out so that we could do a quick introduction, discussion, and vote a nominee?
oh,
I have one. Faster than talking about. human sources.
Point, please, okay, guys.
Wow.
We should have used this trick earlier.
Yeah, we ran into each other getting out the door.
Nope.
I have, so I can do one. We actually had her provide testimony to Brian Haskell. I think we just didn't vote. So, as a reminder, she's being appointed, or reappointed as chair of the Natural Resources Board, which started in 2021. She previously served. Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see the recorded vote, so my mistake, I knew we talked about her, I just didn't know we voted. Okay, so that's a done deal.
Yep.
Then I don't have anything more to say.
I think I've Done mine already.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Gary Moore. River. Another commission.
We'll probably want to. Do you have your latitude? So the process is, by the way, last time we had like 5 of them done. I turned them into the Senate secretary.
Yeah.
They said, please don't do that anymore. Each person, whoever did the whatever investigation should be the one to bring it up.
Oh, really?
With a little sticky, though, vote on it.
Yes.
And the other thing too that I learned, Senate Secretary, is although only the underlined ones we expect
Yes.
to report,
Anyone can call up.
anyone in the Senate can ask you to report out your nominee. So you may want to have a little bit of stuff ready in case someone.
Ready to go.
GARYMOORE. That concludes my report.
So Senator McDowell, you want to go over, do you have that copy of Mr. Moore? The Connecticut River Service, right? Let's get it.
I got 3.
There's 3, and I have them here. Allison Fraser, Gail Fowler. Mary Moore.
Allison's Fish and Wildlife Board.
Yes,
And then others current use of those.
current use and Connecticut River Valley flood.
That's scary. Well,
Yes.
So, Senator McDonald,
I would,
do we want to walk through these? Just so
I
we
would
can-
move one at a time or as a group to report them, each of them.
Okay, so, why don't we do you can do the 30-second intro on the first. So the first nominee is Gail Fowler. 2, membership in the current use advisory board. You want to say something in committee, so we'll know what we're voting on?
Yep, she's a town clerk. She's been working on this, been on committees and current use, knowledgeable. Town clerk in Rutland County. Served in the legislature for a few years, so she understands the process.
Sounds great.
And so it's a reappointment.
Great. And she wants to be reappointed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, all those in favor of reappointment of Gail Fowler to the current use advisory board, please say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like 500. Okay. Thank you, Senator McDowell. The next one is Gary Moore to the Connecticut River Valley Flood Control Commission.
Mr. Moore does quite a few advisory panels here in Vermont and other states. Down in Texas recently, after the Houston floods, had to deal with more water than necessary. So was the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner a few decades ago. Yeah, considers this, it's involved in it's fish and wildlife water or flood waters or rivers. His expertise has been called on. This will be a reappointment.
Okay, great, thank you. Any committee discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of the appointment of Gary Moore to serve as a member of the Connecticut River Valley Flood Control Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
That's, I hear 500. Great, thank you. And the third appointment to McDowell is for Allison Fraser to the Chittenden County member of the Fish and Wildlife Board. Can you introduce Ms. Fraser?
The nominee is the hunter, officially. She can participate in such activities. She's also a salesperson for camping and other outdoor activities, supplies with various stores that sell them. And she's eager to do the job and was pleased to see male only bastion, should she be approved.
Okay. Any discussion? So all those in favor of the appointment of Allison Fraser to the Chittenden County, as the Chittenden County member of the Fish and Wildlife Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Here that is 500. Thank you, Senator McDowell. Jude, can you make copies of these so you still have a copy?
I don't think I need copies. I think once you put them upstairs.
Okay, there you go. If you bring the Senate Secretary, your one-stop shopping. I don't think I have a copy of the form with Miss Haskell. I'm sure I have one once.
She'll get a floor report, but
I have two people,
Okay,
if you are ready for me to
yeah,
talk about them.
please.
Okay, so I have Josh Lagerquist, who was appointed to the current use board. So apparently on the current use board, there's a specific seat for someone who is an appraiser. And so Mr. Lagerquist is a certified general appraiser, and he happens to specialize in large properties, which makes him a pretty good fit for the current use board. He felt like he was interested in joining the board because he felt like he'd be able to help answer all those appraisal kinds of questions. And he's only, at the time that I called him anyway, he'd only been to a couple of meetings, but says that he is enjoying it. There we go.
And he still wants to do
I
it.
still want to do it.
Even though he's been already, he still wants to do it.
Yeah, couple meetings, did not scare
All right, so, any committee discussion on Mr. Lagerquist? Hearing none. All those in favor of appointing the appointment of Josh Lagerquist as a member of the current use advisory board, please say aye.
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 500, but a unanimous group. On to the
On
next.
to the next, who is Michael Hogan, who is also appointed to the current use board. And if his name sounds at all familiar, it is because he spent 30 years as the commissioner of the Liquor Control Board. And he has also been the chair of the Cabot Select Board for 10 years. And so, yeah, so he's since retired from his state job, but very familiar with the workings of the state. He's also on the VSECU board, so he's on quite a few boards. He's been to only just 3 meetings so far, but again, enjoys it, wants to continue, and he said there's a that there's been a steep learning curve. There we are. So, yeah.
Any,
That's fair.
any discussion on Mr. Hogan? So all those in favor of the appointment of Michael Hogan as a member of the current use advisory board, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. That is 500. So here are your
Thank
two.
you.
And you, what was the vote we recorded on Sabina Haskell?
401.
401. Thank you. This one is, I think, recorded on the floor, so.
Chairman?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry, you still doing?
no, I think that wraps.
My,
Does anyone
my,
else have one?
my recollection is that these 3 have already been voted.
Yeah, your people are
Yeah.
done.
No, so am I done with
Yeah,
them?
you-
Okay, that's what I just wanted to verify.
When yes, thanks.
That is Steve Larrabee.
Right, that was
Okay,
one of the group of 5 I brought up when I learned. from
All right,
the
just wanted to
Secretary
verify.
that I should do that anymore, but rather let each individual senator bring his or her own document.
so I got to avoid a little bit of work.
Or you did your work already.
You did yours
Oh, he
already.
did it. He brought it up.
The only thing
That's
is
when they
that
scolded him.
someone could, I don't even know if they've already come up and been approved.
Yeah.
En bloc, as they say up there.
Well,
If you sit next to the third member of the Windsor delegation.
so I mean, the commissioner who I interviewed, John Feeling, hasn't come up yet as a vote. I'm prepared with the floor report.
sure.
the one that comes up, but
Okay.
Unless
right,
you would
yours
like to.
is one- No, you would. You did the report, right?
I did.
Yeah. Is that turned in?
We voted.
Yeah. I think that was also turned in. So what I haven't noticed, is it on the calendar?
I have
Been
been
keeping-
watching. I have been watching because I
Okay.
figured out, but he has not shown up.
Okay, just like, I'm gonna have to be watching,
Yes.
so I have.
And we do need to schedule a secretary meeting for a meeting.
Yes, well, she's,
I know this.
right, but
Yeah.
let's aim to get her in next week, because, we haven't had secretary, we've seen her many times, we haven't had our official, do you want to stay in this job, and those other interesting questions. that go along with it. Anything else before we wrap up for the day? Okay, so, thank you, everyone, for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
keeping the wheels on the